What is beauty? Few things are as difficult to define. It's constantly changing. Standards shift with time, and what was once considered beautiful can seem unusual or even absurd to us today. But some queens were judged even by the standards of their own time, remembered as women of rather plain appearance, and denied the praise others received. Today, I'm going to tell you the stories of 3 such queens, and you can decide for yourself whether they were truly as unattractive as history claims. Make sure to leave a like and let's dive in. As a rule, if you look through chronicles, memoirs or old letters, you will hardly ever find descriptions of queens as unattractive. For centuries, it was customary to describe royal women in the most flattering terms, and honestly, that's not surprising. Calling the wife of a man who holds absolute power unattractive was not exactly the safest thing to do if you wanted to keep your head. But today, we are talking about exceptions. And our first heroine, who was considered unattractive by her contemporaries, is Queen Claude of France. In the series The Tudors, she was portrayed by an actress who could easily rival a Victoria's Secret model in beauty. But in reality, Claude was not like that at all. And just as she was not fortunate in her appearance, she was also not particularly lucky in her life. Most likely, everything you know about her is that Anne Boleyn once served at her court, and that she was the wife of Francis I. And for many, Claude is remembered in history almost exclusively for that, because she lived a very short, quiet, and largely unremarkable life. So now, I want to shed a little more light on her story, because she truly deserves to be remembered as an individual, not just in connection to someone else. Claude was born in 1499, and for her mother, Anne of Brittany, who had endured 14 unsuccessful pregnancies, she became the first surviving child. She was named after Saint Claude of Besançon, to whom her mother had prayed for a living and healthy baby. Of course, both Anne and her husband, King Louis XII, had hoped for a boy. And by the way, this is the same Louis, the much older husband of Mary Tudor, who married the young English princess after Anne of Brittany's death in the hope of finally having a male heir, which, as you understand, Claude was not. So a little fun fact, Mary Tudor was, for a short time, Claude's stepmother. But unfortunately, the fate of this little girl was overshadowed from the very beginning by physical issues. She inherited a hip deformity from her mother, which left her with one short leg. She was very short, and she also suffered from severe scoliosis, which only worsened later due to her many pregnancies. It's also believed that she may have had strabismus, and according to her contemporaries, she had a rather plain faith. Based on these descriptions, some researchers have even suggested that she might have had Down syndrome. But as I've mentioned in my previous videos, trying to diagnose someone almost 500 years later is not the most reliable approach. Although, when I look at her portraits, I see a fairly pleasant, gentle young woman. But the very fact that she was born into a royal family, and her status as the heiress of the Duchy of Brittany, made her a highly desirable bride. At one point, Claude was even considered as a potential wife for the future Emperor Charles V. But in the end, at the age of 14, she married her cousin Francis, the future King of France. And it would be hard to find 2 people more different from each other than Claude and her husband. I think even by looking at portraits of Francis, you can tell he was a striking man. He was tall, athletic, and full of presence. And his reign reflected that same eccentric personality, as did his rather turbulent romantic life, in which Claude played only a very indirect role. Francis had a large number of mistresses, many of whom held real influence at court, and even in politics, while his wife was seen above all as the mother of his children. We can't really say that he treated her badly. In public and at official events, Claude was always given the respect due to a queen. But she was very quiet, gentle, and deeply religious. And in reality, both control over her duchy and any real influence at court largely passed her by. She also had a very authoritative and powerful mother-in-law, Louisa of Savoy, as well as her husband's sister, Marguerite, who, perhaps unintentionally, ensured that the queen remained in the background. The historian and contemporary of Claude, Brantôme, even wrote that Madame the Régente bullied her constantly. For most of her life, Claude was almost constantly pregnant. Over just 10 years of marriage before her early death, she gave birth to 7 children, which took a severe toll on both her health and her already unremarkable appearance. The pregnancies caused her to gain a significant amount of weight, something her contemporaries never failed to mention in their letters. The Austrian ambassador described the Queen of France as slightly hunchbacked and rather unattractive. But even if Claude did not leave a strong impression with her appearance, she undoubtedly became known for her kindness and her character. This is how she was described: very good and very charitable and very gentle to all, never doing any unkindness or harm to anyone either at her court or in the kingdom. And to me, these words about never doing harm to anyone speak very clearly of the pure and gentle nature of this queen. Thanks to the Tudors and films like The Other, Boleyn Girl, it is often believed that when Anne Boleyn was at the French court, she was exposed to all kinds of scandalous behaviour, learning the arts of seduction and indulgence. But in reality, that would have been unlikely in the deeply religious environment shaped by Claude. For example, Claude was something of a trendsetter in her own way, commissioning her famous prayer books. And we also have Anne's own prayer books that have survived, which may suggest a religious influence from Claude on Anne. It is even possible that Anne translated texts from English into French for Claude during the Field of the Cloth of Gold, where she may have first seen her future husband and executioner, Henry VIII. And once I came across an interesting idea in a video that this image of the constantly pregnant Claude may have planted in the young Anne Boleyn's mind, the belief that producing a male heir was something simple, something she later promised Henry, but could never give him. So in many ways, Claude is a much more significant figure in Anne's life than she is often given credit for. And personally, I would be cautious about believing the more scandalous myths about Anne's life in France. But returning to our queen, this is where her story begins to come to an end. Claude died at just 24 years old, from causes that are still debated today. It may have been the exhaustion from her many pregnancies, or, as some suggest, it could have been syphilis, allegedly passed to her by her unfaithful husband, who later deeply mourned her death. And although Claude was not as striking as Anne, nor did she enter history with the same level of fame, and she was not remembered as a great beauty like her stepmother, Mary Tudor, she still lived her short and quiet life with dignity. She gave France 7 heirs, and by all accounts, never harmed anyone, reminding us once again that the beauty of the soul can shine far brighter than outward appearance. If you look at portraits of our next heroine, Margaret Teresa of Spain, you are unlikely to think, wow, what a beauty. And perhaps the reason is that the first thing that catches your eye is her heavy jaw, the famous Habsburg jaw. But I'm going to surprise you, because within her own family, she was actually considered a real beauty. Born from a marriage between an uncle and a niece, after 12 years of attempts in a family where close intermarriage had gone so far that some members had a genetic makeup closer to that of siblings than distant relatives, it was almost a miracle that Margaret was relatively healthy and even survived childhood. Her younger brother Charles, for example, was far less fortunate. He struggled for a long time to walk and speak and was never able to have children, as the effects of this genetic entanglement were already very severe in his case. And by the way, looking at Margaret's portraits, you might be thinking that her face seems strangely familiar. And that's not surprising. She is often called the most frequently painted princess in history. And for that, we can thank the artist Velázquez, as well as the fiancé of this young girl. Because, since we are talking about the Habsburgs, following their beloved family traditions, they came up with nothing better than to choose a relative as a husband for a 6-year-old girl, Emperor Leopold I. Her future husband was 11 years older than her, and was her maternal uncle and her paternal cousin. Quite a combination, isn't it? And since Margaret grew up in Spain, while Leopold lived in Vienna, portraits of the young Infanta were sent to his court almost every year, so he could watch how his future bride was growing up. That is why the little muse of Velázquez had to pose so often for the famous painter in her childhood, that in the end, she left a far more vivid mark in the history of art than in politics. As a child, Margaret was truly adored by her entire family and court, and when she was 15 and left to meet her husband in Vienna, it was very difficult for her to say goodbye to her beloved Spain. In honour of their wedding, lavish celebrations were held, and of course, the young empress immediately became the centre of attention at her new court, where, unfortunately, she was not particularly well received. She made no effort to learn German or to adapt to the local customs, continuing to live very much like a Spanish woman, which did not sit well with the court. If you look closely at portraits of her painted already in Austria, you can almost feel that shift in attitude. There is a certain coldness, even a trace of dislike in the way she is depicted, very different from how she was seen in Spain. Although her husband was clearly captivated by his young wife. But was this marriage a happy one? That is a difficult question. They did find some common ground. Both of them were interested in music, theatre, and the arts, and yet she continued to address her husband as uncle, which, you have to admit, sounds rather strange. In just 6 years of marriage, the Empress was pregnant 6 times and gave birth to 4 children, 3 of whom died in infancy. Only one daughter, Maria Antonia, survived. These constant pregnancies and childbirths were a serious ordeal for her and greatly weakened her. Margaret became so frail that she was carried around the court in a chair, and courtiers quietly hoped that she would die soon so that they could have a new, more suitable empress. And in the end, what many had been expecting did happen. The many pregnancies completely destroyed the young woman's health, and Margaret died on March 12, 1673, at just 21. Her husband, who seemed so devastated by her death, remarried only 4 months later, once again to a relative, this time from the Tyrolean branch of the Habsburg family, apparently having learned nothing much like the rest of the dynasty. When I think about Margaret's life, I genuinely feel sorry for her, because she became a victim of her family's unfortunate political games and all those close kin marriages. She hardly had the chance to truly live or to change anything, and if not for the many paintings, she might have simply been forgotten. So the next time you come across the famous painting Las Meninas, take a moment to think about the rather tragic fate of the girl portrayed in it, a girl who, despite everything, was undeniably lovely in her own way. And our final beauty from this list of unattractive queens was the one who lost not only her looks, but also her teeth and her crown. But how did that happen? Let's take it step by step. Maria Luisa of Parma was the granddaughter of the notoriously scandalous French King Louis XV, and perhaps she inherited not only his temperament, but also his tendency to find herself at the centre of controversy. When she arrived at the Spanish court at the age of 14 to marry the Infante and future King Charles IV, she was described as an extraordinary beauty and a true fashion lover, always ready for bold experiments. She immediately became the centre of court life, active in everything, from politics to influencing her husband and, according to rumours, in matters of love as well. Maria Luisa was credited with countless affairs, the most famous and scandalous being her relationship with Prime Minister Manuel de Godoy. Some even claimed that several of her 14 children were not fathered by her husband, but by him. The Queen shared with him even the most intimate and personal details of her body in her letters, including her menstruation. And yet, as paradoxical as it may sound, her husband never once doubted her fidelity. Over the course of her life, Maria Luisa was pregnant 24 times and lost 10 children. Naturally, such a number of pregnancies could not help but affect her appearance. By the age of 30, the once beautiful princess was described as having the yellow tone of her skin, and her dental problems were frequently noted. She lost many of her teeth, which is hardly surprising considering the standards of dental hygiene at the time and the fact that many women experience such issues after multiple pregnancies. There is even a story that during her exile in France, when she was invited by Napoleon, Empress Josephine once complimented her teeth, to which Maria Luisa calmly removed them and placed them on the table, proudly revealing that they were artificial, leaving the Empress quite shocked. But if we understand how she lost her beauty and her teeth, how did it happen that she lost her crown? Her husband abdicated the Spanish throne in favour of their son, and soon after, Napoleon forced them both to renounce their claims altogether in favour of his own brother, effectively declaring the Bourbon dynasty in Spain overthrown. When Napoleon's army invaded Spain, malicious tongues were quick to place the blame on Maria Luisa. It was said that her involvement in politics, her relationship with the Prime Minister, and her influence over her husband had led to the collapse of the empire. But in reality, I have often come across the opinion that her fate in some ways mirrors that of her relative, Marie Antoinette, who was also turned into a scapegoat for everything that went wrong. And today, many historians are reconsidering the legacy of this woman, who for a long time was simply dismissed as immoral. So, what do you think about these women? Were they truly as unattractive as people once claimed? Or was their beauty simply different, hidden in something deeper than appearance? In kindness, in resilience, in the courage to be themselves? Let me know what you think in the comments. And tell me if you know other women who were unfairly remembered as unattractive queens. And also, don't forget to leave a like on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.